All right, almost done with the setup. Record. Fucked up last time. All right, this is Sports for Real back at you. Conference championship games. This is the time where it's put up or shut up time for everybody involved. All the accolades you've been getting during the regular season doesn't mean a thing right now. What can you do when it counts the most? And we're going to find that out today when Kansas City goes to Baltimore. Normally they're at home for championship games, but not this time. It didn't quite work out in their favor, and it was time for Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City to show what they could do without the friendly confines of Arrowhead Stadium. They showed up last week in Buffalo, but Buffalo, they played a great game. They've been fighting and scratching all year long, but the truth is Buffalo's been undermanned all year long. They've been facing injuries all year, and it showed up real bad last week when they could not stop Kansas City from running the football. And because of that, it gives us a better matchup for today. If you're going to beat Baltimore, you got to somehow stop that run. But I want to get more into that in a second. Before I even get started, let me explain this background that I have here. This is from a TV tray that was given to me for Christmas. It is not an officially licensed product that you get through NFL or wherever. This is somebody's artwork, and it was given to me as a Christmas gift. So if there's something that you might be interested in, hit me up, and I can tell you how you can get your very own copy of your favorite team in any style that you want for your own TV tray or anything else. Perhaps cups, pins, decals, you name it. The person I know can get it done. So if you're looking at this artwork and it looks like it's official, it's not, but it looks real good. Now, back to the game. The rage is the quarterback. And it's always going to be that way until the NFL allows the defenders to go back to playing football. But as long as it's being played the way it's being played now, you're always going to have the quarterback standing out. It's a quarterback league. Quarterbacks are making all the money now. Well, they've been making all the money, and you don't want to get your $200 million quarterback injured. So you're going to make all these different kind of rules to protect that $200 million quarterback. Understandable business. It makes sense business wise if you're the one spending that kind of money. But if you're a football purist like myself, I say he's playing the game. And if he's playing the game, he should get hit just like everybody else. But that's just my opinion. But as far as today's games go, we got two barn burners. I already mentioned something about Baltimore and Kansas City, but the other game tonight is Detroit going into San Francisco. Detroit's a very hungry football team, and they got that little chip on their shoulder, just like I told you a couple of weeks ago, that this could be the team that gets over the hump because they have that want to and that desire to outplay and outwork anybody that they come up against. San Francisco is going to find that out tonight. But going back to the first game, in sports, coaching makes all the difference. If you take a look at what happened last year in the women's NCAA championship tournament, Iowa ended up knocking off the top seed, South Carolina. South Carolina was top to bottom, clearly the best team all year long. But Iowa had a great player, and Iowa's player did some film work. And she discovered that one of the South Carolina players might not be as big of a threat on the outside as it may have seemed. So what she did, Caitlin Clark, I'm talking about, allowed this girl, Raven Johnson, this woman, Raven Johnson, room to shoot. Unheard of, right? Well, it was all over the social media that this was a disrespectful move by Clark. And I said no. Right away, I said no. That was calling Johnson out. If I'm going to pull it back off you and allow you to shoot, it's your responsibility to take advantage of that. Give you an example. And I mentioned this before in the 2008 national championship game when you had Kansas taking on Memphis, and Memphis ended up blowing the game, by the way. They had like a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left and ended up blowing it, lost the game in overtime. But coming out of halftime, Bill Self did something to call out Jalen Rose. And when he first did it, I saw it immediately. I said, Bill Self just called Jalen Rose a hoe. What do I mean by that? He's basically saying to you, Jalen Rose, that you can't beat me from the outside. And what he did, he pulled his two guards back toward the free throw line and left Rose all that room to shoot. Rose recognized it immediately, put a three right in the eye, came back down the court. Kansas did whatever they're going to do. When Memphis came back down the floor, Kansas was back in the base defense. And that was just to let Kansas know that you think you can just pull any kind of defense on me and it's going to work. No. Take this three in your eye. The only thing that was missing in that exchange was Rose looking over at Bill Self, saying, what else you got? He didn't do that. He kept on playing. But that's what he should have did, was to let Bill Self know, look here, it's not going down like that. So last year, when Clark pulled that stunt on Johnson, Johnson seemed to be froze. She didn't quite know what to do because it was unexpected. But just like Jalen Rose, she should have rose up and stuck a three right in Caitlin Clark's eyes and made her play defense. She didn't do that. She didn't know what to do. And later on, to Johnson's credit, she came by and said that I need to step up my game because I got to get into the gym and show these people that I can hit this shot. And that was great on her part. I appreciate that from her. But it came down to film study. Clark felt like she could get away with that, and it worked out in her favor. And because of that, it threw off the axis of the championship. You had three teams. Iowa can beat South Carolina with some major adjustments, but LSU could beat Iowa. And because LSU and Iowa played in the championship game, LSU ended up winning the championship, even though South Carolina is clearly the best team in the nation. Now, to prove that again, they just played the other day. South Carolina beat them again, and it's like the 15th straight time they've beaten LSU. They couldn't beat Iowa because Iowa came up with some way to stop them or some advantage that gives them just enough room to stay close enough that they can pull it off in the end. But in the end, we know that South Carolina is still a better team. Now that Johnson has gone through that, Clark tries to pull that again later on in the year, it won't work because Johnson will be better prepared for that. But that brings me to today. The rage has been the quarterback in the NFL, especially Lamar Jackson. He's going to win his second MVP, which is great. Never denied that the kid couldn't play the game. Never denied that this kid was a great talent. I like to see Jackson do well. But it's kind of like what you have in Dallas with Dak Prescott. Prescott was having a great year. It looks like, he's gotten over the hump. When he gets to the playoff, he reverts back to what he was before. He can't quite get over the hump. So he's got to get to the point where he can do better than what he's done in the past in order to progress. But it wasn't just Prescott. It was coaching. Green Bay thoroughly outcoached the Cowboys. And because they thoroughly outcoached the Cowboys, it put Prescott in a position that he really hadn't been in a whole lot this year, and it cost him. You see that it was really not a whole lot of growth that actually took place. Translate that over to today's game with Baltimore going up against Kansas City. Jackson been phenomenal all year. He's getting praise for being how much he has progressed, the same vein that they've given Dak Prescott. Now you got a team that's going to go play for a championship. And if Jackson is able to do what he's been doing, same way Prescott had done what he was doing all year, then his team should advance, right? Not so fast. Forget about Kansas City. Let's go back to last week. Houston and Baltimore first divisional round playoffs. Houston, they weren't ready yet. They aren't ready to compete for a championship. So the fact that they were able to stick around for a half was honorable on their part. But in the end, once Baltimore took the lead, they kind of got their legs together and they separated from a lesser Texans team. But the first half, Texans, as long as they stayed around in the game, they were going to have a chance to win it. And as you saw at the end of the second quarter, when they started getting to Jackson and psyching him, keeping him in the pocket, they started to tighten up. And Baltimore is the kind of team that if they're in a ball game, they don't tend to win a slugfest. They are the kind of team that have to be out front. Don't believe me? My team, Pittsburgh, they go out and lose to the two worst teams in the league. They lost to New England and they lost to Arizona in back-to-back weeks. But yet you beat Baltimore twice. Yeah, I know the second time you played, you didn't have all your players playing. That's understandable. You felt like you could beat Pittsburgh, right? So let Pittsburgh get to the playoffs and we deal with them then. But what happened the first time you played? Pittsburgh had a backup quarterback, my understanding, and they still beat you. Pittsburgh is the kind of team that could care less about playing against the Ravens because they know they can beat the Ravens. And in the back of their mind, the Ravens know it too. But if the Ravens jump out to a lead, Pittsburgh generally can't catch Baltimore, and they know that. So they tend to keep the game in a way that it stays close. Houston is not able to do that. Yeah, Houston beat Pittsburgh, probably would have beat them again. But they don't match up to Baltimore like Pittsburgh does. Yeah, I know they're in the same division and all, but the style of play makes all the difference. Just like in boxing, styles make fights. But what you did see with Houston in that first half, and into the second quarter, they started getting rush lanes together that allowed Jackson to stay in the pocket. And when they stayed in the pocket just long enough and got enough of a pressure on him, they started getting to him. Now, to Baltimore's credit, and this new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, he had all the scenarios all lined up. So when they come out in the second half and they took that lead, it's like the Ravens just relaxed a little bit. Blew out that breath of fresh air. Okay, now we got a lead, so let's go play. And then they pulled away from a team that they're better than. But let's just say if this was a team that was better than Houston and they were in the same situation, you come out balled up like a knot. What are you going to do? So I say all this to say this before I even talk about Kansas City. If you want to beat Baltimore, you can't over focus on Lamar Jackson. What you have to do is to take away what the Ravens do best. And what the Ravens do best is run the football. So if I am designing a scheme to stop the Ravens, the first thing I'm going to do is stop that run between the tackles. Gus Edwards and his crew, they can run the football. And if you slow that down and do it in the way that you're rushing and keeping the pass lanes together, and when Baltimore has to drop back and pass, that's the one thing I haven't seen that they can do. Yeah, they can run the football. Yes, they can do play action pass. Yes, they can throw it out in the flats. But it's always with the threat of the quarterback running. If you can keep that quarterback in the pocket after you have slowed that run down, you got a completely different Baltimore team. So having said that, me as a defensive coordinator, I am coming in there to stop the run. And let me give you another example about where I'm coming from. A lot of you guys don't know this, but Emmitt Smith, first time he ever came to Jacksonville, he came in for the second round of a high school playoff game where he played against Leroy Butler and Jacksonville Lee in the second round. Lee had the number one defense in the state that year. Emmitt Smith came in. He missed 2 games that year. He was rushing over 200 yards a game. But he still had over 170 average without those 2 games he missed. So, of course, you got to stop this running back if you have any chance of beating Pensacola Escambia. Well, Leon Barrett, the guy that just named Riverside's field after, is a longtime defensive coordinator. I think they call him Big Barrett. He came up with a plan that he's going to stop Smith. Well, in the second play of the game, Smith popped one for about 30 yards. And by the end of the half, he had like 70-something yards. He's not stopping Smith. So what did he do? At halftime, he said, well, we're trying to get cute and doing all this. I want to go back to my base defense. And when he went back to his base defense, he started stuffing Smith. Smith ended up with like 33 carries and 96 yards for the whole game after having 70 in the first half. So what am I saying to you? You can get cute and try to design something to stop a particular player and get away from what you do best or what your identity is, and it puts you in a bad way. And what Barrett was saying, had he had played his base defense the whole time, been a completely different game. Not that they played bad, it just that year was just a heavily penalized team. And the penalties and turnovers ended up catching them, and they lost a 4 overtime barn burner. But the point is, you can't get cute. And if you go to designing these exotic schemes to try to stop Lamar Jackson, is going to get you beat. So just like Barrett did, you need to go and come up with a base plan to stop Jackson. Me, I'm stopping the run. And then when they drop back to pass, I take my 4-3 scheme and I got my outside linebackers into man zone, matchup zone coverage. So when they take off and run, I got somebody to the outside. I'm going to press the pocket right up the middle. Keep him in the pocket because I don't think when it's time to win a championship, I'm not convinced that they can throw the football to win the game. I want to see the kid do it. But that's the one thing that he has not shown me he can do. Can you throw it down the field when you need to do it? I'm not talking about scrambling. We know you can scramble. Can you stand in there and throw the football when you have to throw it? You're not going to always be able to run. You're starting to get these little nicks and nags from these injuries. You ain't going to be able to run all the time. At some point, you're going to have to throw the football from the pocket. And that's what I'm waiting to see. If Jackson can stand in there and throw the football from the pocket when they have to do it, then you're not going to be able to beat the Ravens. Also, if you cannot stop the run and allow Jackson to improvise, and because you playing some exotic defense, you're not going to beat the Ravens. You better hope you get some turnovers, but the way they playing, that's not the case. They're going to run the football down your throat until you stop it. And if you can't stop it, you're not going to be able to stop those little rinky-dink passes. Next thing you know, they're going to be on the goal line. They're going to play action you to death. They're going to spread you out. They're going to run up the middle. They're going to kill you. So you got to go back to the basics and stop the run. So that's what I'm going to be looking for today. I'm not going to make any picks because I'm not against anybody. You can look at it any kind of way. People are tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes going to the Super Bowl or deep into the playoffs. Well, beat him, and then you don't have to worry about that. This is Baltimore's opportunity to do that. They hadn't had a chance to beat them or play against them in the championship game, so this is the first for them. Now, speaking of Kansas City, we all had them buried for dead, at least I did, because they've been struggling all year long. But the reason they were struggling is because they were dropping a whole lot of passes. And you saw some of the frustration slip out from Mahomes in that game that they lost to Buffalo the first time when they complained about the referees. It kind of looked sad, all the crying they were doing that day. And I've never seen professional coaches and athletes get before a press conference and start complaining like that before the world, especially after all the questionable calls Kansas City has gotten over the last couple of years. So we don't want to hear that, man. Go play the game. And I think the message got to them some kind of way because they have galvanized as a team and they started playing some decent football. Now, Miami was a perfect antidote for them because Miami was not hitting on all cylinders. They had injuries they were dealing with, just like Buffalo. That's not the reason that I'm saying that Kansas City won the game, but it was a perfect opponent to get ready. Then you get Buffalo, who was a bruising outfit. Buffalo, they just all the defensive injuries they had all year just finally caught up to them. They can't stop the run. Kansas City did a pretty decent job of stopping the run, and it gives us the best matchup for today's game against Baltimore. So it's going to come down to this. Can you keep Jackson from scrambling and cutting your throat? One thing they cannot do is what Houston did. They allowed them to spread them out and allowed Jackson to do that quarterback draw where they run right up the middle with one lead blocker. There's nobody there. You do that, you're going to get killed. But the difference is, if there's a close game, we know that Kansas City can make plays when it counts. I know that Mahomes can throw it down the field when he has to. Like I said, I haven't seen that from Jackson. Because of that, this is Jackson's opportunity to show the world how much as he has grown as a football player, and he can take his team to that next level. But if he cannot throw the ball down the field, because Kansas City is going to be there, on 3 or 4 turnovers, either way, this is going to be a close game. And he's going to have an opportunity to show the world just what he can do down the field. Now, Kansas City is going to have to keep him bottled up. And if you think about it, playing against Buffalo was actually a good warm up for them to play against the Ravens because they had to stop Josh Allen. Josh Allen got off to a great start the first half, but in the second half, he wasn't able to run the football like he did earlier, and it kind of caught up to him. If they can keep Jackson control, pick up where he left off last week, then Kansas City has a great chance to get back to the Super Bowl. A lot of people are counting this as a done deal that Baltimore is the best team. They might be. But Kansas City, they got that heart of a champion. They're going to have to beat Kansas City. I'm not picking anybody because whoever I pick lately, they always lose. So I want to leave that one alone. But at the same time, it's going to come down to how Kansas City plays on defense. We know that they're going to score. We know that Baltimore is going to score. But how much are they going to let Jackson off the hook is the question. But it's going to have to be stopping that run right up the gut between the tackles. That's what it's going to come down to. Coaching. In the other game, Detroit. I told you Detroit got that chip on their shoulder. They just got it to the point where they just feel like they can compete with anybody. And then after that game that they lost against the Cowboys, when they had that call when the lineman supposedly didn't report, which he actually did, they've gotten a little stronger together. And they getting more confident as the weeks go by. Now I've been noticing a little spat going on between Deebo Samuel and the Lions cornerback. I forget his name, but he said back in October what it was going to be like if he played against Samuel in the playoffs. Now he's doing all that talking, but Samuel's a good player. And I told you guys all year long that I feel like San Francisco, when they're healthy, they got all their weapons, they can beat anybody in the league by 10 points. But if they're not healthy, or if they're struggling like they did against Green Bay, then Detroit's going to the Super Bowl. The best thing happening to Detroit this week is that Green Bay blew the game last week because the way Green Bay is playing right now, they were playing championship football. But San Francisco just turned out to be a little bit better in the end because they capitalized on the Packers' mistakes. So it's going to come down to how much can Detroit run the football and how much can they slow Christian McCaffrey. Hopefully, it's not a whole lot of turnovers because who wants to see that? Anybody can see a blowout. You saw that last year when not Detroit, but Philadelphia played San Francisco when they didn't have a quarterback and it just got real ugly. Kind of like what you saw with Florida State and Georgia in the bowl game when Florida State didn't have all their people. It's the same kind of thing in the pros. 1 or 2 people are absent, it changes the whole game. So we don't want to see any major injuries, and we don't want to see a whole lot of turnovers. We want to see 2 good football teams going at it back and forth, and let's see who's the best. But Detroit, again, is a very dangerous foe for San Francisco. So I think this game is going to come down to how well San Francisco is prepared to play. Again, if they're healthy and they got Deebo Samuels back, they should be able to beat anybody in the league by 10 points. In my opinion, that's what I've seen all year long. But they play like they played last week, and they're not going to beat Detroit. So I'm not going to make any picks, but I expect to see 2 good games today. So, but again, back to what I was saying in the beginning, this little diagram behind me, that is a diagram that was taken from a TV trade that I had given to me for Christmas. And this is not an officially sanctioned product by the NFL, but if you want some artwork created like this for your favorite team or any kind of design that you want put on the cups, hit me up, drop me a message, and I'll let you know how you can get your own personalized copy of sports memorabilia. So I'll get back with you later on, but look forward to some great football today. And don't be surprised at what I just told you comes into play. This is sports for real. All right. Chats today. Nope. Stop recording. I hate that.